The House on Cedar Street, USA, 1994. The house had stood empty for more than 20 years. On the outskirts of a small town in the state of Maine, people simply called it the Gray One. The paint had long since peeled away, the windows were boarded up with plywood, and the yard was overgrown with dry weeds. No one clearly remembered what had happened to the family who lived there in the 70s. Some said they moved away. Others said they disappeared. In August 1994, 3 teenagers decided to sneak inside. The house smelled of dampness and something rotten. Glass crunched beneath their feet. The air was heavy, as if no one had opened a door there in years. The living room was almost untouched. A couch, a 1970s television set, a coffee table. On the wall hung a family photograph: father, mother, and a little girl about 6 years old. All 3 of them felt something strange. The eyes in the photo didn't just stare forward. They seemed to be watching. "It's just dust," one of the boys whispered. In the kitchen, everything looked as if the owners had stepped out for a minute. An empty plate sat on the table, and beside it, a spoon. But there was no dust on the table. It was everywhere else. On the floor, on the cabinets, on the windowsills, but not on the table. One of the boys ran his finger across the surface. Clean. "Someone's been here," he said. At that moment, a soft shuffling sound came from upstairs. They froze. The old stairs creaked, though no one was climbing them. The second floor was darker, the hallway narrow. The door to the children's room stood open. An old toy doll lay on the floor, missing one eye. And that's when they heard it. Laughter. Soft. Childlike. From behind the bathroom door. One of the boys slowly approached and suddenly flung the door open. Inside, nothing. But the mirror was fogged over. And written on it with a finger were the words, "She is still here." Something slammed dully behind them. The hallway door had shut. The flashlight began to flicker, and now the laughter sounded right behind them. It no longer sounded like a child's. The flashlight flickered once more and went out. Darkness inside old houses is not like darkness outside. It is thick. It has weight. It presses on your eyes, your lungs, your ears. One of the boys began to laugh nervously. "It's a prank. It's just the wind." But there was no wind in the house. The windows were boarded up. The air was dead and still. The hallway grew colder. Not just cool, but as if the temperature had suddenly dropped 10 degrees. Their breath became visible. And then they heard it. Slow footsteps. Not on the floor. On the ceiling. Something was crawling above them. The boards creaked softly. Dust drifted down onto their shoulders. One of the boys looked up. He couldn't see anything in the darkness, but he felt it. Felt that someone was looking down. Suddenly, at the end of the hallway, the children's bedroom door clicked shut. By itself. Slowly. And from inside came the laughter again. Now it was closer and more distorted, as if someone were trying to remember how to laugh properly. One of them bolted for the stairs. He managed only a few steps when he heard a rasping sound behind him. Not a scream, not a word. A wet, choking rasp, as if water were stuck in someone's throat. The second boy turned around and saw it. In the darkness of the hallway, near the bathroom door, stood a figure. Too short for an adult, too tall for a child. It stood unnaturally straight, its head slowly tilted to the side, and then they heard a crack. Its neck bent further. Too far. The angle was wrong. A human neck doesn't bend like that. The first boy ran down the stairs. The steps groaned under his weight. The second followed. The third didn't move. He couldn't. because the figure was suddenly closer. Not walking, not stepping, just closer. Now it was only a meter away, and they saw its face. Skin gray like dust, eyes empty, dark hollows. But deep inside, something moved, as if tiny shadows writhed within those pits. Its mouth slowly opened, and from it came a whisper. "You will stay." Suddenly, the third boy screamed. His scream was sharp, short, and cut off as if someone had clamped a hand over his mouth. The other two were already downstairs. They burst onto the porch. The door slammed shut behind them with a heavy thud. From inside came banging, dull, irregular, and something else, scraping, as if fingernails were dragging across wood. They waited. They shouted their friend's name. No answer. A minute later, the second-floor window slowly opened, and in the dark opening, the same figure appeared. It looked down, and beside it stood the third boy. His face was empty, without emotion. His head slowly tilted to the side, at the same wrong angle, and he began to laugh, the same childlike laughter. The window closed. Lights in every room flared on at once, though the house had been without electricity for years. And a second later, everything plunged back into darkness. The third boy was never found, but months later, new teenagers who entered the house said they heard laughter and saw 3 silhouettes in the hallway. One of them stood with its head tilted at a strange angle. If you liked the first story, leave a like. If you enjoy the second or the third, make sure to subscribe. The Last Call, Germany, 2023. Olena disappeared on a Tuesday, an ordinary day. Work, the cafe near her office, texting with a friend. Security cameras recorded her leaving the business center at 6:12 p.m. The parking lot was well lit. People were walking by. No one heard a scream, because there was no scream. Her car remained where it was parked. Her purse was on the front seat. Her phone was gone. The last mobile signal was recorded at 6:19 p.m., 7 minutes after she walked out. At first, the police assumed a voluntary disappearance, until 3 days later, her father received a call. The number was hidden. He answered immediately. On the other end, silence. Then, heavy breathing. Uneven, as if someone was trying not to cry. "Olena?" he whispered. And then he heard a sound, metallic, the slow scrape of a chain, and a very quiet voice. "Dad." The connection cut off. The phone was traced. The signal came from an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of the city. Police arrived within 20 minutes. The warehouse was empty. Dust, old crates, rusted beams. But in the center of the room stood a chair. A metal chain was fastened to one of its legs. On the floor, footprints, shoe prints, and another set. Bare feet. The prints were fresh. They led to a wall, and there they vanished. No door, no hatch, no passage, just concrete. Investigators initially believed it was a prank or a trap, until the next day when her father received a message from an unknown number. Just a video. In the video, a dark room. The camera is fixed. The light is dim, yellowish. In the corner sits Olena, alive. Her eyes are open, but she does not move. Her hands are chained to a radiator. She stares directly into the camera,
and does not blink. 1 minute passes, 2, 3. She still does not blink. Then a voice is heard off camera. Calm, male. Say something. She slowly opens her mouth, but instead of words, a sound escapes her throat. Not a scream, not crying, but a dry, scraping noise, as if she is trying to speak, but her vocal cords are damaged. The camera suddenly zooms in on her face, and it becomes visible. Under her eyes, small cuts, thin, precise, parallel, as if someone had been practicing. The video cuts off. A few hours later, another one arrives. This time, she is lying on the floor. The camera is positioned farther away. A man appears in the frame. His face is not visible, only his hands. He slowly runs his fingers through her hair and says, "She is very obedient." The video ends. Police attempt to trace the signal. VPN, rerouting, clean. But a forensic expert notices one detail. In the second video, in the far corner of the room, there is a faint sound, barely noticeable.
Like childlike laughter. After the second video, the police no longer doubted. This was a kidnapping, planned coldly and professionally. But the worst detail was not noticed immediately. On the third review, an audio expert isolated the background noise. What first seemed like ventilation hum turned out to be voices. Not 1, 2, sometimes 3. Quiet, muffled. They were discussing something. Calmly, without hurry. "She's not ready yet. Give her time. They always break." The word always came through especially clearly. That meant Olena was not the first. Police reviewed disappearances from the past 5 years. 4 women, different cities, different circumstances. No bodies, no witnesses, no suspects. And one more detail. In 3 of the cases, relatives received strange phone calls. Silence, breathing, and a metallic sound. 2 weeks later, a new video arrived. This time, the camera was positioned higher. Olena was sitting on the floor. Her hair had been cut short. On her wrists, deeper marks from restraints. Her gaze, empty. But the worst part was something else. The room was brighter, and 2 more figures could be seen standing in the darkness behind her. They stood motionless, watching. One of them was holding something, a metal tool. It could be heard lightly tapping against the wall, the same sound her father had heard on the phone. The man off camera spoke. "Tell them you understand." Olena slowly raised her head. Her lips trembled, and she whispered, "Don't look for me." The tone was mechanical, without emotion. And then she suddenly screamed. The scream was short, muffled. One of the silhouettes stepped forward. The screen abruptly went dark. No more videos came. No signals appeared. The warehouse was searched again. Beneath a layer of old concrete, they found a strange cavity, small. Inside, scratch marks. No bodies, no evidence. 3 months later, the case was reclassified as inactive. Olena's father left his phone on the table every evening. He waited for another call. And one day, 6 months later, the phone rang. Unknown number. He answered immediately. Silence. Then, familiar breathing. But this time, there was something else. Several voices at once. Whispers. And among them, hers. Quiet. Distant. As if she were standing in a large room. Dad. And immediately, another voice, very close to the microphone. "We have a new one." The call ended. That same night, in another city, a girl disappeared. Her car was left in a parking lot, her purse on the seat, her phone gone. Olena was never found. But sometimes, in police archives, when old videos are reviewed, technicians swear they see more figures in the dark corner of the room than there were before. And it seems that with each viewing, there are more of them. Those Who Search, Canada, 1987. In October 1987, 6 students set out on a hiking trip into a provincial forest near British Columbia. A 3-day route. A map, compasses, a radio. They had hiked together before, experienced, careful. The weather was cool but steady. The autumn forest stood quiet, dense, and damp. Tall coniferous trees barely let the light through. Even during the day, shadows lay thick between the trunks. On the second day, Mark disappeared. He had walked about 200 meters away from the camp to gather firewood. 20 minutes passed, then 40. When they called his name, there was no answer. They split into pairs. At first, Mark's footprints were clearly visible. The ground was wet and soft. But after several dozen meters, something strange happened. His tracks stopped. They didn't turn back. They weren't washed away. They didn't shift direction. They simply vanished, as if he had taken one last step and evaporated. The radio picked up no signal. The forest seemed to swallow sound. By nightfall, they decided to return to camp, and that was when they heard a whistle. Short, clear, 3 notes. It was their agreed signal to regroup. "It's Mark," Sarah whispered. The whistle came again, but not from the direction he had gone, from the opposite side. They stood in silence, and then something moved in the darkness between the trees. Not an animal, too upright, too slow. A figure appeared between the trunks. It stood far away, but it was clear. It was human. "Mark?" one of them called out. The figure did not respond. It simply stood there, then slowly raised a hand and made a gesture. "Come closer." 2 of them took a step forward, and immediately from the left, another whistle sounded, the same one, 3 notes, but now closer, and from the right as well. The whistling repeated from different directions, as if they were surrounded. The figure ahead took a step back, and another, inviting them. One of the boys couldn't take it anymore and ran forward. He shouted Mark's name and disappeared between the trees. Seconds later, they heard his scream, not long, sharp, as if something had struck him hard. Then, silence, and that was when they saw it. More figures began to appear between the trees. 1, 2, 3. They emerged without a sound, all dressed in dark clothing, faces covered. They didn't run. They didn't hurry. They simply narrowed the circle. One of the students tried to scream, but someone was already standing behind him. A gloved hand covered his mouth. It all happened quietly, too quietly. 5 days later, a search party found the abandoned camp. Their belongings were still there. Food, tent, sleeping bags, but no people. 2 kilometers from the camp, they found something else. A tree, and carved into its trunk, 3 short lines, 3 notes. There were almost no signs of struggle, only deep indentations in the soil, as if people had been dragged, but not in one direction, in different ones. The case was closed a year later. In the official reports, one strange fact was mentioned. Over the past 10 years, 11 other hikers had disappeared in that area, and each time, witnesses, if there were any, mentioned a strange whistle. 3 notes. In 1993, a hunter reported to police that he had heard the same signal in the forest. He hid, and through the branches, he saw a group of people, men and women, dressed in dark clothing. They were walking in a chain, silently, and among them, he recognized a face from an old missing persons poster. One of the students. His head was shaved, his gaze empty. He walked steadily, and when the procession disappeared between the trees, the hunter heard the whistle. 3 notes. And then, one more. A new one, as if someone were learning to imitate it.